welcome to another episode of Out of the Woodwork podcast, brought to you by Axminster Tools with me, Sean Evely. In this episode, I talk to woodworker and online content creator, Matt Estlea. Matt has forged himself a successful career on YouTube, creating inspiring videos, teaching invaluable woodworking techniques, with his unique style winning him hundreds and thousands of subscribers. His website is packed full of information, as well as project plans and tools. Okay, so Matt, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I think everyone listening definitely knows who you are, but they might not know how it all started. I think you have quite a similar start to me in terms of there was an inspirational teacher at school. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've always had an interest in making stuff with my hands, always liked doing it, but I guess never really considered that you could actually make a living from it. Like just going all the way back to the start, there was like this after school club I had to go to because my parents weren't able to pick me up from school straight away. So I had to go to this like extra club thing. And there was a choice of doing like sports there, or there was this art table where they just got a load of like crafty bits and stuff. And I was always on that instead of like going out in the field and playing football and things like that, unless I got dragged out there by someone or whatever. But I'd always want to be making things. And then when secondary school came through, you know, I started doing like tech and all that, woodwork, resistant materials as it was called then. And yeah, we just had this teacher come in who was just this like massive guy, huge, like what seemed like 16-inch biceps, like massive like that, pretty terrifying. But he would always take the mick of the other teachers and just the system as a whole. He would always be like really great with us students and just talk to us like human beings. And then one day he brought in this box that was made of Macassar ebony and had Art Deco style. And he told me that it was worth, it had sold, I think, for £4,000 or £5,000 or something like that. And it was at that point it sort of like all came together for me where I was like, right, okay. So I've seen things like this before. I've seen nice wooden boxes, but I've never actually clicked that people make that with their hands and then sell it. Like, I don't know what I thought, like they were 3D printed or like they chopped down a tree and then it came out like that. I don't know what I was thinking before, but like that was the moment where I was like, oh yeah, like this is what I want to do. And from there, we can talk about it obviously, but I started at Rycottwood and it's just been like, that was the point in which I decided that this is what I want to do. It wasn't just about the money. It was like, it sort of tied together a lot of interests of mine and then was like, okay, I can do that and make a living from it. Brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a lot of people definitely don't go in it for the money because it is such a hard profession. It's like the love for woodworking. And so am I right in saying you didn't do A-levels and you did sit-in guilds at Rycottwood?
Yeah. So this interaction with my teacher at secondary school happened, I want to say in like May or June or something like that of my final year at secondary school. So I'd already chosen my options for college to do A-levels. From memory, it was like history, astronomy. I think I was going to do electronics or something like that. I can't really remember. And something else. There was 4 options, completely different. And the only reason I started doing those or subscribed to do those was because of my friends. I was just going to follow them to the college. But then I had this interaction with this teacher and had this like brain explosion of like, right, okay, I don't want to do this. I know I don't want to do this stuff. I want to do this instead. And 3 months prior to starting the A-level course, I dropped it all. Well, I didn't necessarily drop it. I just didn't show up on the first day and I showed up to Rycottwood instead.
Oh, wow. So I didn't even know sitting guilds actually was an option until I joined Rycottwood as the degree course. And looking back, I wonder how much more I would have learned if I started earlier. Do you think it was important for you to start that young?
Yeah, well, firstly, I can understand why you couldn't find it because it was a absolute nightmare to dig out and figure out what this course actually is. Like when I was searching for furniture making, there was a course in Basingstoke, which is where I'm from, that it said it was furniture making, and I was like all interested in it. And then it turned out this course had like stopped being taught in 10 years prior, and they still had this web page available for it. So then I sort of found Wood. I can't even remember how I came across that. And yeah, it was just like, okay, it's Wood, but it's part of this thing called City of Oxford College. They both seem to teach this course. Is it the same place? But who's teaching it? What is it? And I just had to basically show up and just be like, I want to do this thing. How do I do it? And the faculty manager at the time, Chris Hyde, showed me around and everything. And it was a really good introduction, just a one-on-one tour. Loved the place. And for me, it was a great way to put the principles of woodworking into practice. Like the degree course was amazing in terms of teaching design and processes of manufacturing and, all these other things. But for me, the fundamentals were taught so well in City and Guilds because a lot of it was hand tool based. And that's the kind of thing that I try and get across to my audience, the importance of, you can learn all these processes and stuff, but fundamentally, if you can do it by hand, you can pretty much work a lot of other things out. That's excluding coding on CNCs and working with G code and all that sort of random stuff. It's completely esoteric, but fundamentally woodworking, if you can do it by hand, you can pretty much work out how to use a spindle molder once you learn the basic principles of it. You know how to work with the grain and like which orientation to put it over a planer and things like that. All sorts of things were taught to me, just completely intrinsically in City and Guilds, which is something that I think would have been much harder to learn in the degree had I just jumped straight into that, especially to have that over 2 years as well.
Yeah. So did you just literally show up to the City and Guilds without any like previous correspondence with them, like just knocking on the door?
I think I emailed them soon after I had this interaction with my old teacher, but obviously it took ages to actually find the course. So God knows how long. It's probably like a month or two after that. So I reckon there was only about 3 or 4 weeks before the course started that I actually emailed them. And then actually having the tour, I remember that being extremely close to the start date, at least from what I perceived at the time. But yeah, to me, it just seemed like I turned up. I was like, I want to do this. And then before I knew it, I was just there with 16 or maybe 20 other students just being like, where are all my friends? What am I doing here in Oxford? Like, it was just it's completely out of character for me, completely out of character to take a leap like that into like just this completely massive risk, as it seemed to me at the time, to do this thing that apparently I was suddenly passionate about. Like, very weird, very out of character.
Yeah, I think you probably had the record for the student that stayed the longest at Wood because after City and Guilds, you then went on to the degree course. And then we'll talk a bit later about teaching. But what were your experiences in the degree course? And because you made some sort of, would you call them iconic pieces, especially with your brand and your channel, those final year pieces, that's when it all started in terms of YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, the degree for me, it was tricky in the sense that I'm not very good at being taught design. I was once told by one of the tutors that I was belligerent in taking information or something like that. That was actually written in one of my assessments. I tend to be quite stubborn with my ideas, and I sort of get the idea. And you know what it's like with sketchbooks, but just for people listening, like when you having a design, it's not necessarily coming up with a design and saying, this is what I'm going to make. You need to document everything from your initial ideas. In fact, not even that. You need to document your research and inspiration first. So you need to look at trees, cars. I looked at space. I looked at images of space. I didn't actually look at space, but I looked at all these things. But in order to create a sketchbook, you need to document your whole process. You need to show your research. You need to show your initial ideas. You need to show your development. You need to show the final design and all the things like that. For me, one of my designs in particular, I just woke up in the night and thought, I had this thing in my head that I wanted to make. And like, that was it. That was the finished design. All I needed to do was work out how to make it. But the annoying thing was I then had to backtrack and forge all of this sketchbook to say, oh, I looked up at space and I came up with all these random ideas to come up with this. And I did that continuously throughout the degree, until I got to the workbench in the final year where I still kind of had that idea. I still knew I wanted to make a Roubo workbench, but I kind of like relaxed my stubbornness a bit and let people come in and change the design slightly. And I did that through putting the design process out on YouTube rather than pitching it to the rest of the class and tutors and stuff, which I still did. I actually documented the design as I was going and said, I'm planning to do this. What do you think? And the 3 or 4 people who were watching at the time chipped in. I actually had Matt Cremona, who was hundreds of thousands of subscribers at that point, start chipping in, even though I didn't even have more than 10 subscribers when I was doing it. And that was how I sort of was able to relax that right at the final moment of Rykerwood with the design part of it. So I wish I could do it again with the whole degree. I think it's an amazing thing. I just wish that I could have relaxed a little bit more and let people, let people critique my designs and let people change them, where I saw fit, rather than just being like, this is my idea and I'm sticking with it. That was my experience of the degree.
Yeah, well, some of the pieces you made were fantastic. And I remember talking to you while I was there about, I think we're a bit similar as in you come up with ideas and you also develop ideas in your head. Let's say you're on a train or just cycling into Rykerwood and you're just thinking, okay, well, maybe the drawer can open in this way. But then you forget to write it down.
Yep. And
by the end of like the pitching day, when you say what you want to make, it sounds very much like a finished idea. Mm-hmm. And I also did a bit of backtracking saying, I actually got this from this, but I didn't. I just thought there's a curve there. I'll just say that. I'll say that curve came from the arches in this building, something like that. Yeah. And at what point did you start the YouTube channel at Rykerwood?
So the YouTube channel started in the first project I filmed, which was the curved cabinet. That cabinet was the one that I woke up in the middle of the night with the finished design for. I was living with my parents at the time. Yeah, so I actually came up with the idea when I was in the first year of the degree and drew it on a piece of paper, and it just sat on my desk for a year. And then in the second year, when we were tasked with making a cabinet, I was like, right, this thing, I'm going to do it then. And so,
was this the wall-mounted one or the floor-standing one?
The wall-mounted one. Because the floor-standing one was done in the third year, at the start of the third year. So this is the wall-mounted curved cabinet that I designed a year in advance and have a finished prototype. Well, not a prototype, but a finished design a year in advance, and then had to backtrack this entire sketchbook to create. But at the time, I was sort of going through some rough stuff personally, girl problems, friend problems, just life problems in general. And it basically got to a point where I was just like, I got nothing to lose with filming YouTube videos on this, because YouTube has been an interest of mine from a very young age as well. Like when I was very young, well, sort of early teens, me and my friends used to film Jackass style videos. We watched the movies when we were far too young, got inspired by them and started posting them on YouTube. And I love doing that. And yeah, ever since I started Rykerwood, I'd always wanted to film it, but never had an urge to do it. Never had the confidence to do it. And so when it came to the second year of the degree, which was my fourth year of Rykerwood overall, all these circumstances were just kind of like, well, I don't really care anymore. I'm just going to start filming. And it happened to be that project that it landed on, the curved cabinet. And yeah, it was an interesting experience, just sort of having been there 4.5 years by that point, to then just rock up all of a sudden with a camera on the day and having all these 50 people in the workshop staring at you, because it's like, what is this guy doing? Why is he getting in my way with this camera? Why is he I wasn't vlogging to it or anything, but I was setting it up on machines and things, and I knew it was being a nuisance to some people. But after about 3 weeks, it was kind of I just kind of became the guy with the camera, and most people started getting interested in it. I didn't really get much judgment to it or anything like that, or much negativity. Of course, friends took the mick a little bit, which is fine. I think that's their duty to do that. But overall, they were very supportive of it. It was a very odd experience. Again, very out of character for me to take a jump like that. But it somehow worked, I guess.
It definitely did. I remember I started right at the beginning of filming, and I remember you said you wish you started at the beginning so you could see the whole journey. I remember on the first day, well, actually, when I first started Wood, I think the first few weeks were just like joint exercises, and I didn't need to film that. I think I got it out during the first, build project, which was probably a box. And I had the same thing. People were, looking like, what are you doing? And I actually had a YouTube channel at that point, and I think I had about 10,000 at that point. So it wasn't, nice. It was at that level. Yeah, it was at that level where it's like, okay, well, I guess it's worth doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you start off right, I can imagine it was harder for you to start the YouTube channel in front of everyone instead of it already be a bit established.
Yeah, it was quite tricky. I think the most awkward bit for me though was at the start. I wanted to kind of document what Wood was, just to sort of like give a little bit of context to like where I am and things like that, to kind of give like a starting point for the channel. And so I started filming this tour around the workshop, and I got there, I think. I got to the college at 6:30 or something in the morning, thinking it'll be completely empty. I'll film a quick like vlog style shot out the front of the college, being like, this is where I am. I wish I still had the footage because it would be so awkward to look back on. But I remember taking like 20 attempts to get each and every sentence out. It was not a nightmare. And eventually I got myself into the department, and I started filming around, started going in through the corridor, went into the computer room, and I was like, this is where we do the designing, went into the first workshop. And then I got into the degree workshop, and I was like, had the camera, and I was like, and this is the main workshop. And I panned around, and Joe, the teacher there, was just there, just like chilling out. I think he was like setting up for the day or something. He was there super early. I don't know if that was normal or not, but he was just like in the shot. And I was like, just really embarrassed all of a sudden. Put it away like nothing had happened. He's like, what are you doing? And I was just like, just filming. And I don't think I actually started filming videos that day because I was so embarrassed from it. But it was like shortly, maybe a few days or weeks afterwards, where I actually started the cabinet and started filming it. But mate, it was so embarrassing.
That is a hurdle I think everyone faces, is talking to the camera, because you've spoken quite openly about it, about getting more comfortable. At the beginning, I didn't talk at all. Now in your videos, you do a lot of narration and a lot of, face in front of the camera talking. So yeah, you're a lot more comfortable now. And it is interesting seeing on people's YouTube channel, like videos grow, videos improve, editing styles change, people get more comfortable. I think that it is good to keep early videos on the channel. Yeah,
definitely. It's definitely good to keep them on there. But I mean, on the subject of being comfortable in front of a camera, I'm still not really. Like, I know how to come across as confident. And I have to like switch onto this like almost persona to get things out there, or to get the video to appear as I want it to. But when I really struggle filming in front of other people. It took me, for example, if my girlfriend's in the workshop, can't do it. When I did the river table last year, I had this short bit that I needed to act where I was pouring some epoxy, and I needed to pretend that my phone rung in my back pocket, and I stopped pouring the epoxy to pick out the phone. And even the mere thing of just acting this thing, not saying anything, it was just pretending to pour a bucket and getting a phone out my back pocket. Couldn't do it in front of her. Couldn't do it. I actually had to get her to walk out the workshop and go on her phone for like 10 minutes while I did this little act. And it's crippling. It's so annoying. I got to a point where I was comfortable in front of Rob when he was filming for me, because me and him, we take the mick of each other so openly. It's like all judgment and stuff is out the window with him. I know he's not thinking anything, or if he is, I don't care because it's Rob. Like, I got very comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But oh man, I'm still not good at it. It takes me 10, 15 attempts to get sentences out. I always think faster than I talk, so I stumble over my words. Like, yeah, I'm not confident in it at all. I'm just, well, I know where my weaknesses are and I know how to work with them and around them.
Well, it doesn't show. It doesn't show at all. So I think you're doing well. Yeah, you're not the only person, to be honest. A lot of people. It's me in front of the camera in the workshop is completely different to out in public. I wouldn't be able to just, hold a camera and walk down the street. And I've seen it. People do it, and the confidence. I applaud the confidence of people just like not caring, not a care in the world as other people walk past.
The only time I was actually able to do that was in the end of my Canada vlog. I think the entire time I was trying to work. The entire reason for that vlog was basically me trying to get confident at filming in front of other people. That was the underlying thing that I was trying to get. And at the very end, I did it in the airport, but only because I had a few beers. I just had to take the edge off. That's the only way I was able to achieve it. But yeah, other than that, it's been a lost cause.
How long was that end clip? Was it just like, okay, that's the end, bye? Did you actually say a lot?
It was actually quite prolonged. It felt like 5 hours, but I'm sure it was no more than 5 to 10 seconds. But I remember seeing people look at me and I was just like, I'd had enough to take the edge off, and I was just like, I'm never going to see these people again. But yeah, it still wasn't comfortable.
So after Ryco Wood, you became an artist in residence in Silver. And were you teaching at Ryco Wood at the same time as that?
So I was teaching evening classes. There was a little bit of a weird overlap with it. I believe I was teaching evening classes at Silver, and then I came in and started teaching day courses either the year after. I'm really bad with chronological years and dates and remembering stuff, but basically I started doing evening classes first and really liked doing them. And then all of a sudden I just started teaching City and Guilds there. I can't remember the circumstances behind it, whether I definitely know I needed money at the time, but I know there was a part of me that was thinking this will be a good experience because I've come straight from education into I'm trying to teach woodworking, having not taught anyone before. I knew it would be a good sort of on-the-job experience for me. Also, it gave me access to Ryco Wood's drum sander, which was a little bit of a selfish reason, keep them sweet, keep access to that. Yeah. But yeah, I started teaching evening classes when I was at Silver, and then was teaching the City and Guilds courses shortly thereafter.
Teaching is quite important to you, isn't it? Because I guess you like passing on the knowledge for the next generation, because the courses were to what age group was that? City and Guilds is A-levels, and also on your YouTube channel, your audience. Do you know what age your demographic is on YouTube?
Yeah, so on YouTube,
it's older, I guess.
Yeah, YouTube, it's primarily 25 to 35-year-olds. It might even be 35 to 45-year-olds. But yeah, it's primarily that. Obviously, it's male, which is changing, which is pretty cool. But predominantly, it's 95% male. But when I was teaching, it was 16 to 18-year-olds. Yeah. When I was teaching, it was 16 to 18-year-olds. And I had a few what we called mature students, which was basically anyone over the age of 18. So I had a few people who were in their 40s and a few old boys in there as well. But mostly 16 to 18-year-olds.
Out of the Woodwork is brought to you by Axminster Tools. Nobody is more passionate or knowledgeable about woodworking than us. A market leader in mail order tools and the machinery industry. We offer a friendly and personal service to many thousands of woodworkers around the world. Whether you're a trade professional, a business owner, an education leader, an amateur DIYer, or a hobby enthusiast, we share your passion. Discover more from Axminster Tools. Just visit www.axminstertools.com. How important do you think technology is with, promoting the craft and education? Because there's only so many people that can join these physical classes, but your YouTube channel is reaching a lot more people.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's really important. It's important to get reach out there. It's important to get these things in front of people's eyes. And tech is a great way of doing that. Also, selfishly for me, I think I've always wanted to have some sort of impact or make a change in people's lives, but I'm so bad at doing that in person that doing it online with a sort of medium of a computer or a camera or something in front of me and that person gives me, like, although it's not as intimate, we should say, like it's not a one-on-one conversation where you're connecting with the human, being able to make a change at scale from a distance through a computer or a camera is really good for me as well, because I feel like I'm doing my thing while also not overstimulating myself with too many eyes on me, like in a classroom or like doing a talk or something like that. That completely drains me usually. Whereas having the distance of having tech or whatever in between really helps me while also helping others as well.
Yeah, because YouTube, as we're at a stage where there's new craft shows coming out, TV shows coming out all the time, YouTube, there's so many woodworking channels on YouTube that this wasn't a thing, a few years ago. So I think it is opening people's eyes and, showing people that didn't know about woodwork that it is an option and encouraging more people to start it up.
Yeah, definitely. It's just about awareness, I think. That the difficulty with courses and stuff like that is obviously funding and accessibility and stuff like that. Like there's so many courses where teachers are paying for materials for students. I had to do that once. It's so difficult with these things, but at least making people aware of them, either if it's through little courses in primary school or just getting kids making stuff with their hands, just getting them aware of it allows them to actually think that, okay, I don't necessarily need to just become a banker or a mortgage broker or, a programmer or something. Like there's other things I can do that are hands-on and will be very fulfilling. It's not just this. Because that's what did it for me. I just needed to see a finished box. I just needed to see that a person had made it, and then that changed the trajectory of my life. You just need awareness.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of teaching, YouTube channel is, most people just create a YouTube channel, but you went a step further and created the online woodworking school. Why did you do that, first of all?
That was a bit of a risky move on my part. I would say the main reason I did it was because I really enjoy teaching at scale. Like I said earlier, it makes a difference in people's lives. I also, when I was teaching at Rykerwood at the time, I was teaching them how to make this box. And I was like, it'd be so useful if they had an online resource that instead of having to come to me for questions all the time, they could just quickly reference this video. Or like the day before we were doing this, I was teaching them how to dovetail a corner. They could look at the video and, just get a basic idea of it before coming to me, seeing the demo again and have an opportunity to ask questions. Resources, they're extremely important when it comes to teaching. And the more you have, the more varied resources you have, the better, because people learn in different ways. Some people are best learning from me. Some people are best learning from a video where they can get real close-ups. You need all these options. And so I thought, right, I'm going to teach how to make this exact box we're doing at Rykerwood online. It's going to take me a lot of time to do it, but I also don't want that to be lost time where I'm not earning, I'm not throwing money down the drain, basically. So I had to find ways of monetizing it. So I basically primarily put it out there to help my students, but also knowing that the college weren't going to pay me for it, I was like, right, I'm going to recommend tools and stuff and get affiliate marketing. I'm going to sell the plans as an optional upsell, because a box is a box. You can learn how to make it. You can change it as needed. You don't necessarily need the plans. Most people don't. They just buy them as a tip, as a thank you for the series. So I did it primarily for my students, but also knowing that it would make a difference to a lot of other people as well, while also giving a good resource to the college that they could use for, future students. It's not like it's just my students that are benefiting from it. There's students in Rykerwood now who are using those videos, which I think is awesome, because it takes some of the weight off the teachers' back as well, which, having been through that experience is very important.
Yeah. And since you mentioned setting plans, that's a big part of what you do now, isn't it? Because you've got plans for your workbench, you've got plans for the box. And do you have any future projects in mind that you want to make plans for?
I mean, the plans are, they actually have sort of tapered off a little bit, but at the start they were really really useful because they actually started with the workbench with Bertha, because I was making it and I was just planning on putting the series out there and being like, I made this cool workbench, but then people were asking me like, oh, where are the plans? Like, can I buy the plans? And I was like, I mean, I don't know, 10 quid, whatever, 15 quid. So I was like, I've got them already. I'll just put them as a PDF and stick it online. And they flew out the door. It was unbelievable. And so the plans were really good at the start. I find I don't get as much from them these days, but I still obviously will provide them because why wouldn't I? I need the plans to make the thing that I'm going to teach how to make. So why not put them online as an extra resource? If they're particularly time intensive to make or, particularly detailed, I charge for them. But if it's just a simple thing like, I don't know, a book stand or a practice joint frame or something, I just put them up for free so people can use them as a little, just a little taster of what to expect from buying my plans and also just getting into woodworking with as little friction as possible.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So you now moving on to, you did the artist in residence at Silver and you moved into your current workshop. Mm-hmm. And I know you're currently doing a big move, but before we go into that, what was it like setting up your own workshop because Silver sort of has a facility pre-made and they got the machine shop, but that was a big step, setting up that workshop and creating the Power Tool workbench.
Yeah, so my current workshop is an absolute blessing. It's amazing in terms of dimensions and size for getting me to this point. Like it's basically 4.5 meters wide by 10 meters long. I've got full clearance to do basically whatever I want in there. And for me, it was more about making it. I didn't necessarily prioritize production. Like if people come to me asking for ideas on workshop layout and stuff, there is other people out there who know much more than I do about efficiency and things like that. For me, it was actually just about looks and convenience and just generally segmenting it so it makes sense. I'm not going to put something like in front of the planer so I can't use it properly, but equally like there's layouts that are more efficient than what I've got. But for me, I spend so much time in my workshop that it makes sense to put as much effort into making that a home as I do my actual home. In fact, here at home, there's barely any decoration at all. My room is literally a mattress on the floor. I have a desk in there that's just got like a pile of clothes on it. I've got a dresser that was £15 from the community furniture project. And I've got my clothes basket and a bin. There's literally nothing that I have at home for any decoration. all of my effort goes into my workshop because that for me is basically my home. And so, yeah, for me, it's more about creating a vibe, a creative kind of vibe than it is like a production environment, because I'm not doing production. I need to be in a certain zone in order to film. I want it to look cool. I want it to stand out. And that's how I tried to curate my workshop at the start. And yeah, it's why I'm having to move, because I've put too much stuff in there now.
Does it feel like a studio in there?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, around the workbench, I've got 3 lights at the front, 3 lights at the back, plus I've got a few these are all ceiling mounted lights, like LED panels. Obviously, there's a bit of a set going on where it's like a backdrop, and the glass cabinets that were donated to me from Axminster. That was very kind of them. I can't remember I think it was Warrington. They were just getting rid of them, and the manager was like, "Yeah, you can have these if you want." I'm like, "Cool, thank you." So that was really cool. Yeah. So it definitely feels like a set in there. Whether I'll keep that in the new place, I don't quite know. I do like it. I think it makes me stand out as a channel, and like when the first shot is there and I'm on a set, I think it has a sort of punchiness to it that captures attention. But yeah, it's very intense, sort of standing there with all these lights on you. Yeah.
It is cool though. It is cool that you can kind of fuse 2 different worlds, sort of like filmmaking and woodworking together. And now you're at the stage of the big move. And you mentioned it in your last video. It's going to have different sections. You're going to have like woodworking. Did you say a bit of metalworking area and an office area? Yeah,
so these are technically all areas that I have in my current workshop, but it's so small in there. I mean, it was so big when I moved in, but these things happen. You outgrow things, and yeah, the new one, I just needed space to properly package items without getting them covered in dust from the lathe that was, right next to it. Or dust is the major issue. It always is in workshops, but particularly if you're trying to give like a clean premium look to things that you want to get boxed up, send out to customers. If they're covered in dust and like epoxy fingerprints and things like that, I mean, that will probably still happen because I'm messy as hell, but it's segmenting areas. I don't even have a toilet in this current one. Like, I don't have a sink or anything like that. In the new place, it just gives me all these extra facilities to reduce friction in my sort of everyday interaction with the workshop and the things I need to do. And just give me the space to actually do them without having to shift things around or work around just random things I've got in the way.
Yeah, one of the big questions is with the newfound space you have, will there be a table saw in it?
Yeah. I'm still debating that. There is a space where it could fit, but I still haven't needed one by this point. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm just getting it for the sake of it.
Do you think you're at the point where it's like an image and you're just like, you'd think the viewer's won now if you do get one?
I tell you what, there is a bit of that because like I said earlier, I'm really stubborn. There is definitely a part of that, but also I genuinely haven't needed one. And I have this really bad habit of purchasing tools just in case. Like I was literally in Axminster yesterday and I bought a bunch of wood turning chucks that I don't need. I just got them just in case. And there's all sorts of things. And a table saw is on that list. Like I want to get one just in case. The only thing that has stopped me doing it thus far is a little bit of that stubbornness, but also space. And I actually haven't had a need for it yet. Like at least with wood turning chucks, they do make some processes easier and stuff like with things I'm doing now. But a table saw, I just haven't got there yet. But I still really want one.
Yeah, well, not that I'm a sales guy, but I think if you did get one, you wouldn't regret it.
I know. I tell you what,
would find yourself using it.
I really miss the panel saw at Wood. Like if I was going to get anything, it would be a panel saw. I love those things. But yeah, it's just not got the space nor the need at the moment. Yeah,
are you going to vlog the whole move? Because I know Alex Steele, when he moved to America, he did a whole series on the new workshop, which was really interesting to see that. So are you thinking about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I want to. I'm still figuring out the way in which I want to do it, because I'm finding a lot of success these days in just posting one video that captures everything instead of doing it all over multiple parts, which tend to drop viewers and retention. If I do it all in one video, I tend to be able to do it a lot better. But it's obviously a very prolonged move. It's going to take a long time, and waiting to get a big video out at the end of it might not make sense. So I'm sitting on that. I think I will do it in parts, but I won't do it in any more than 3. I don't think 3, maybe even 2.
Yeah. So the marking knives, we had to talk about your marking knives because that's probably one of the big things that has allowed you to move. Would you say that with the revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've really struck gold with them, to be honest. I mean, they have really helped me not only fund a lot of things, but actually find direction in what I'm doing. Like, for me, of course, I'm going to say this and lots of people will question me on it, but it's actually not necessarily about the money with the knives. They help me, but for me, I've actually realized making them that my passion is primarily in tool making. I absolutely love tools. It's one of the earliest memories I have of Wood was because I started working at Axminster at the time when I started Wood. And I remember as soon as I was able to get my employee discount, I basically bought all of I bought all this Lee Nielsen equipment and was just like captivated by it. I loved looking at all the mechanisms, how it was made. I know everything in and out, all the metallurgy and stuff that is needed to get these things to work properly. It fascinates me, and it's taken me until the point of getting these knives up and running to actually realize that tool making is what I love doing. I mean, I've got various 3D prints behind me here of just like things I've tried to make and like all these random things that, yeah, I just love it. Tool making is my thing, and the knives are helping fund that, hopefully, just to sort of scale it up, get them into more people's hands and prototype different tools.
Yeah, seeing the progression from you making the metal part of the marking knife, by hand and prototyping that was really interesting. And now you get them outsourced. Do you think that you'll get to the point where the whole thing would have to be outsourced because there's too many orders, or is it something where you'll always want to be making the handles?
Yeah, so this is I've had a lot of internal and external debate about this with myself and other people. For me, there's this thing of it takes a long time to make these knives, a long time, and you've got the opportunity cost of not only do I have to make them and spend time doing that, but it's also, while I'm doing that, I can't be making videos. Life is on pause while I'm doing that. Sure, they sell at the end, but that's only going to happen to some point. Eventually, if I'm not making videos, those sales are going to dry up. People aren't necessarily going to have a want or need to buy them or anything like that. So I need to be actively putting videos out there and progressing things and whatever, while also maintaining this back end that helps fund what's going forward. So, you find ways of speeding things up just through production naturally. That's what I've done. I've got to a point now where I think I make them as fast as I can while not compromising on quality, but there will be a point where I'll need to outsource them. Now, the level in which I outsource them is what's up for debate. Like, do I put them on a CNC lathe and just, batch them out, whatever? Or do I get someone to hand turn them? These are still questions that are unanswered, but the only thing I know for certain at the moment is that the quality cannot be compromised. Whether they're on a machine, if the machine isn't able to match the quality, it needs to be hand sanded up to 600 grit. I don't hold out for a machine being able to finish that quality, so there's going to need to be a level of hand sanding involved. That's probably not going to be me doing it, so I might need to hire people. Like, there's all sorts of things that I'm still figuring out, because this is my first time running a business. I'm just going off what other people tell me to do and what I observe other people doing. But yeah, I will need to outsource things at some point if I'm to actually progress with the thing that I love doing, which is developing and testing more tools.
Yeah, it is quite exciting making your own kind of product line, especially tools. I saw on your Instagram you were looking into CNC lathes. Is that because for the knives? Was that for the knives?
Yeah, well, I think with that I'm going to test the knives on it, but I don't hold out for it being able to work with the types of materials that I plan on working with. So actually, to fully answer the question earlier, to get to the point where I actually am with it, what I want to do is get to a point where I'm outsourcing the cheaper knives, the simple woods like cherry, oak, maple, the basic ones. Get those maybe outsourced on a machine and, still sanded up to 600 grit and properly finished up to the usual quality I want. But then there's going to be certain releases of knives like, I don't know, things like Massa birch. There is no chance I'm putting that on a CNC because it will blow up. I need to do that by hand. And so I'm thinking I'm going to have this sort of back end of almost automated processes or like outsourced ones, and then have more premium products that are still made by hand, just so people can, there's still value in the handmade aspect of it, and also making some more affordable to others. Just give people more options. And that'll be the same with a lot of tools. It just so happens that the knives are quite easy to make by hand, whereas the CNC lathe I'm looking at is to develop future tools that are not as easy to make by hand and will require it'll require an element of finesse that I simply don't have on the lathe.
Yeah, and making sort of a difference in price, because at the moment they're all made by hand, so they're all at a certain price range. So having some made by machines in your common timbers and some more expensive ones, I think it's a good idea because it'll open up to more people. But you mentioning your love for tool making, which is the first time I've heard that, is that a sign of where you want the channel to go? Do you think the types of videos you'll be uploading in the future are tool related, prototyping type videos?
I think for me, the the channel will, at least for the foreseeable future, I've made the mistake of saying the channel will always be this, and then inevitably I want to change it. But for me at the moment, the way I sort of see it is I love the style of videos I put out there now, like the river table last year and the record dovetail attempts and all of these other one-off videos I've done. I love the sort of woodworky challenge of those. The tool making part of it, I think I'll document it as I go, but I don't think it will be like a main part of the channel, because at the end of the day, I'm a woodworker and I'm selling tools to woodworkers. Like, I need to relate to those people still. You can do that somewhat as a tool maker, but if you're a woodworker, you can literally demonstrate the tools that you are making to other woodworkers. And not only demonstrate them, like actually test them as well, make sure they actually work and, all these other things. So I see myself continuing on the trajectory I've got at the moment with big one-off videos, doing projects, challenging myself, because that's what I love doing, while also, developing this sort of passion project of mine as well, which is tools.
Out of the Woodwork is brought to you by Axminster Tools. Having spent the past 50 years working with makers and creators, we understand the importance of providing the products you need, the knowledge you trust, and the committed service you deserve. As a British retailer, we're proud to support British design and quality. We take particular pride in the manufacture of our growing range of own products at our state-of-the-art facility in Axminster. From concept and design through to production, everything is done in-house. For more on our own grown products, plus top quality tools from around the world, visit www.axminstertools.com. So in your last video, you mentioned this exciting van conversion, which I'm still a bit confused if you're going to try and finish the whole van conversion before you move. Do you think you still can do that?
So a van conversion has been on my mind for probably about 4 or 5 years now. I remember first going to Bristol and seeing all the people living in vans there. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like, like I said, my home here is very simple. I don't have a lot. I don't need much apart from my workshop. And so it makes no sense for me to pay rent on a house that I barely need. Sure, it's convenient and stuff. It's nice to have space, but I don't need it. And so with the van, it's kind of like, I'll get onto the time crunch and stuff with it in a bit. But for me, it's about sort of stripping away all the complexities and stuff of home living and all that and make it complex in a van or something like that. But basically, my tenancy in this current place ends in November, which as of filming this is about 3 or 4 months away. I don't know, but 3 or 4 months away, maybe even 2. And a van conversion takes a long time. And basically the idea was to move out of this house into a van so I could basically cut down on, all the stuff of living in a house, but also be a little bit mobile as well, because I don't actually know where I want to live in the UK, or even if it is in the UK, I don't know if I want to be somewhere in Europe or anything like that. Unfortunately, having a workshop does anchor you down to some extent. So there will be nights where I'm actually living in the car park of the workshop, but it's about having a little bit of, I just want to have a little bit of mobility in and around around the workshop when I'm sort of stationed there, because I think I will spend a lot of time there. But as for the time crunch, I don't think I'm going to get it done in time for when the tenancy ends. And I do think that there's probably going to be a point in which I am either living in a very unfinished van or potentially living in a workshop again. Because I've already done that once. I lived in my current workshop for 10 days or so between tenancies. And I think it might be the case again with this one.
Yeah. I think if I were to convert a van, and because if I knew I'd be living in it after, I'd want to spend so much time on it, making all the cabinets, dovetailed or whatever, and make it really nice in it. So what's your plan for the quality level? If in 3 or 2 months, is it going to be one of these evolving things that you'll keep on upgrading, do you think? Or are you going to try and make it to the best of your abilities in that short time?
Yeah. So when I came up with the idea, I had exactly the same thing as you, the same idea. I was like, I'm going to make this proper boutique inside, really high quality, walnut interiors, LED lights, everything that you would expect from something we might produce, whatever, dovetailed cabinets, dovetailed drawers in particular. Then I was struck with the harsh reality of weight limits. You can't have too much weight in a van because your insurance doesn't cover it, your license doesn't cover it, or something like that. Basically, I can't exceed 3.5 ton, and that 3.5 ton includes the existing weight of the van, which I think for me is somewhere around 1.8, maybe even 2 tons. So I've only got enough, I've only got about 1.5 tons, if that, to get not only all the furniture and stuff in there, but all the batteries, the water tank, the gas tank. I mean, well, just focusing on the water tank, that's a tank. You've got to assume it's full of water, and also a grey water and maybe a black water tank as well. Like all these things that are kind of like, actually, it's not as simple as just making all these high quality dovetail cabinets and stuff like that. Like, sure, you can do it, but actually it's a really difficult thing to find ways to reduce weight, because even if I do keep it under the 3.5 ton limit, let's say I make it 3.4 tons, that's still a really heavy van. Like that's going to absolutely, drink fuel. That's going to be really difficult to handle. It's going to be slow at braking, all of these things. So it's not only about getting it under the 3.5 ton limit, but it is also just trying to strip it as much as possible. And you've got to, I'm looking at foam cord plywood and all these things that they use to fit out boats and things. And unfortunately, it does mean that I've got to compromise a little bit on, some of the dovetailed drawers and things like that. And I've got to be smart with it. I think I could maybe do drawers, but I couldn't do like fully solid cabinets and stuff that I wanted to. I've just got to do a lot of veneered work and things, which I think will be a cool challenge given the setup I have, or the limited setup I have. But that's the reality of it, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, challenge is good. So
yeah, and as we know, filming a project doubles the making time. So will you be filming this? Is that going to make it harder to complete?
I will be filming it. I do agree with you, though, in that filming doubles a project. I'd also add that me making a project also doubles it because I'm so bloody slow at everything. So it's going to, I am going to be filming it. Again, it's one of those ones that I don't know if I'm going to be doing in parts or as one big thing. But yeah, I will be filming it.
I'm looking forward to that video.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're very experienced on YouTube. So before we go, I want to hear, lots of people now want to start YouTube and let's specialize in like the making community, I guess. But what advice would you give to other makers? Should we go for in the industry? It doesn't have to be YouTube and then YouTube. What advice would you give?
So I think there's a lot of advice out there that you can get from people. There's the general ones of, I think the most important advice is just start. Like that's the biggest barrier for most people. It's not, being bad at presenting, or it's not knowing how to work a camera or how to edit or anything like that. Like those are things you can learn. The hardest thing is just starting. That's the main bit of advice I could give you. But a lot of people say that. For me, I actually think the thing that has, if we're focusing on brand, let's focus on brand for a sec, because that for something is something that I've tried and focus on a lot, and I accidentally stumbled on. I've got a lot of books and stuff on it to figure it out. Brand, I think for me, is what has really helped sort of establish the position I'm in of like I don't want to say like a position of authority, but it's people trust my opinion on things, and maybe the British accent helps and things like that, but the brand is a big part of that. And I think the best bit of actionable advice I could give to people is don't only sort of talk about what you are, but talk about what you aren't. So you need to, there's a reason there's so much polarization in the world today with things, and so many like cults, it seems. It's because they're not only speaking for what they are, but they're also speaking for what they aren't. They're saying we're these people, but we're not these people. They're like, you almost demonize the other half or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, I am constantly, it goes down to simple things like I don't like freehand sharpening. I say that. Like I make jokes about freehand sharpeners and all these things. So there's basic things like that, but also you're talking about like bigger problems like the lack of funding or interest in art-based subjects in the UK or around the world or whatever. Like, you're talking about more systemic problems and saying like, this is not what I stand for. Like, I want to stick up for this kind of thing. Saying what you don't stand for is, for me, equally as important as saying what you do stand for, because it helps solidify who you are as a person. It helps solidify your brand. If you're just there saying, I do this, like, buy this thing from this person, like, you're just taking up every sponsorship opportunity, and you're not saying no to certain things because you're just like, you're not turning around to these sponsors and saying that this product is rubbish, or you're not saying, you need to stand for what you believe in, because that will help you. It's quite uncomfortable, but at least you can do it from the safety of the internet. And of course, you don't need to be completely pessimistic when you're doing it. You don't need to be a complete like drag or like, horrible person when you're doing it. Like, be respectful, of course, but for me, I think that's been really important for me. It's people know what I am and they know what I'm not, and I'm pretty open about that. And so I think it helps. That's the advice I would give people.
Yeah, that's really interesting, being, saying the things you don't like as well as saying the things you do like. Because I guess if, like you said, if you do mention the things you don't like, then you sound more credible. Because if you don't, then people think, oh, well, he likes everything. So
exactly. I mean,
you don't know how good something actually is.
That's the problem that a lot of influencers have these days, and particularly the reputation around them. It's just because they say yes to every sponsorship opportunity. And it's like, yeah, but do they actually, like, is this something they actually use? Like, I don't, there's only been one time I think I've done that with a sponsor, and it was with Raid Shadow Legends, and I did it just because it was an absolute really funny thing. And funny enough, I actually ended up playing it afterwards because it's a really addictive game. My brother is constantly playing it next to me. But
really,
yeah. For me, I turn down sponsorship opportunities all the time. If I don't believe in it, I won't do it. And that really shines through because it means that people can trust you. They know that your opinion is worth something. And I think that is where the somewhat of a position of authority has come from, at least with me, or at least respected opinion, maybe not authority, but it certainly helps. And it's worth doing from the start. Just put yourself out there, say what you are, say what you aren't, and stick with that. It might change over time. Like, my opinions on certain things have changed, or at least refined, or become a little bit more flexible in some ways. But as long as you're open about that and you're not like, you're not just saying yes to everything, that I think will do yourself a favor, and also the industry as a whole. Like, it just gives influencers, and I don't class myself as an influencer, but ultimately that is sort of what I do. It gives everyone else a bad rep if you're just saying yes to everything.
Yeah, well, that's another question I was going to ask, actually. Would you class yourself as a fine woodworker, an educator, a content creator? Are you all of them? What are you?
Yeah, I tend to say I don't. I think that classing myself as a woodworker is, I don't know. I don't feel right doing that because I'm not as much of a woodworker as other people are. Or maybe I'm more of a content creator than I'm a woodworker. Like, probably 70 to 80% of my efforts goes into actually creating content and editing videos and YouTube and the media and the back end and everything of that. The actual woodworking part of it doesn't take up a whole lot. I actually tend to say woodworker and content creator, but if someone was to say one, it would be, I am a content creator with woodworking as my medium, because I have interest in all sorts of things outside of it. Like, what if I happen to do leatherworking? What happens if I start doing, stuff on this engineering lathe, like prototyping tools, like a tool maker? It gives me a little bit of flexibility. Not that anyone would care if I said I'm a woodworker and I started doing leatherworking or whatever, but for me, it just sort of helps solidify in my head that this is what I'm doing, and woodworking is my current medium. And yeah, I don't say influencer just because it's got so much baggage around it these days. Content creator is like, I'm actively trying to like make cool things, not influence people.
Well, since you're not doing as much woodworking as maybe you would like, is there a project that you're really wanting to make, or there's something you're going to do in the future when you have the time?
It's the current one has been, or the one at the moment is this van. I've been wanting to do it for so long, but prior to this, the river table was something I had in the works for, or at least in my head, a year in advance. Again, that's one of the ones I had like fully fleshed out in my head. I knew what it was going to look like, and then I just made it. But yeah, the van is that current one. And then long term beyond that, it's the tool business. Like I want to have a range of tools that all, I don't want to say I want to mimic Lee Nielsen, but I take a lot of inspiration from what Thomas Lee Nielsen has done with Lee Nielsen, and also things like Blue Spruce and Veritas and all these other premium tool makers. Like they put some serious work into their tools to make them work well, but also just as a line of products, they all look amazing. Like they're so they just work together. And I want to be able to do that, but with my own spin on it, have tools that work in a certain way that works well for me, have an element of customization available to it. So it's not only, you're not limited to a certain handle material or whatever. That is my sort of long-term goal. And there's going to be a lot of short-term ones between them, but that's the big pie in the sky at the moment.
Yeah, one of the most fun things about woodworking for me, and I guess it's the same for woodworking, is once you come up with an idea, figuring out how you're going to make it. I love the problem solving of working out how to make a piece of furniture. And I guess it's the same with tool making as well.
Yeah, that's it. Just completely different medium. It's very fun.
Okay, Matt. So thank you so much for this chat. It's been great. And it's been great learning about where you started and the future plans you have.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great chatting to you again.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
See you soon, mate.
Join us again next time for another episode of Out of the Woodwork. For more episodes, to listen and subscribe, search for Out of the Woodwork on all major podcast sites, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And for more woodworking project guides, demos, tools, reviews, and more, visit www.axminstertools.com.